Antelope Freeway 1 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/2 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/4 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/8 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/16 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/32 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/64 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/128 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/256 mile. Antelope Freeway 1/512 mile. We've just passed Antelope Freeway.
This is Dale Matthews. I run BadCounty.com, a local website dedicated to watching local government. I've made more than 500 videos this year, and BadCounty.com just hit 90,000 views. I question local government, and they hate that. This week, I'll give you an example of why. So, I'm sitting in an open meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, and the head of Public Works, that's Rob Brandeis, is explaining why he needs a bunch of new vehicles. As Brandeis explains it, the vehicles that are on his bad list are too dangerous to drive. Too dangerous to drive. I'm not going to let my employees drive these at all. They're too dangerous to drive. Now, that's a really dangerous vehicle. Why are they too dangerous to drive? Well, they're old. I don't know about you, but I've got a pretty old vehicle, and I don't consider it too dangerous to drive. But nope, it's not going to be possible to take these vehicles anywhere because they're just too dangerous. Well, now, if you do sell them, what are you going to do with them? Well, we're going to sell them to the public. Now, wait a minute. If they're too dangerous to drive, you're going to sell them to an unsuspecting public? Really? This was question number 1. What's this about? So at that time, Sandy Cassanelli was a commissioner, and she said, well, I have an old vehicle, and I don't consider it too dangerous to drive, that I'm putting lives at danger by this. So before I say yes to this, along with the other commissioners, would you be good enough, please, to bring in a listing, maybe with some pictures or at least some material to explain to us why you feel this way? He was kind of put out by this, but okay, I'll go do that. So the following week, he comes in with a list. It's got photos of the vehicles, and it's got a couple little pieces of information. And he said, well, these are the vehicles that so desperately need to be replaced. They're too dangerous. And she's looking at the photograph, and as Dwight Ellis pointed out, he says, oh, this one looks really dirty. So Sandy reaches down and picks up the photo and rubs on it. It's the photograph that's dirty, not the vehicle. Okay. That's number 2 question for me. What's this about? So she says, well, it's kind of difficult to tell from looking at a dirty photograph. So how about if I were to come by and visit you and take a look at these vehicles for myself? I'm not an expert, but I'll bring an auto mechanic with me, and we'll get Dale Matthews here to come by with his camera, and then you can explain to us, and then everybody can be educated. Nobody was happy with this, but they finally relented and said, okay, come on by. So we arrive at the vehicles, and the first thing that we find is these aren't the vehicles that were on his list. Really? This is number 3. What do you mean these aren't the vehicles that were on your list? You said these are the ones that need to be replaced. Well, these are the vehicles that need to be replaced. He says, this is not the ones that you brought to the commissioners. Then we find out that Public Works has changed the tags. Changed the tags on the vehicles. Now, I'm going to stop counting at this point because that's number 4, but here's my question to you. What kind of honest people are going to change the tags on the vehicles just before the investigators arrive? Stop and think about that for a minute. They changed the tags on the vehicles. Sandy Cassanelli says, reasonably enough, well, why did you do that? Why would you do that? There's really no answer. Well, actually, there's been a couple of typographical errors. So we go down through the list of things, and I'm videotaping all this. She goes down through the list, And there's this one's changed, and that one's changed, and this one's changed, and that one. She says, gee, that's an awful lot of typographical errors. So, really, what would you do? I mean, at this point, I just couldn't keep completely quiet, and I said, well, you don't really have a problem with a bunch of malfunctioning vehicles. What you have is an outbreak of typographical errors. He didn't like that very much. Okay, all right. So we go over to the Parks Department. There they have a perfect example of a vehicle that needs to be replaced. And we're looking at the vehicle, and one of the fellows there is saying, well, one of the reasons that we have to replace this vehicle is it's got paint chips. Paint chips. Yeah, it's got these loose paint chips, and it doesn't look very nice. Yeah, but what's happening with are the paint chips flying off and striking people's eyes? Well, no, but it doesn't look good. Fella, really? Now, she was very polite. I'm thinking stuff. I'm not saying it, but I'm thinking, wait a minute. You want to replace a vehicle because it just doesn't look very nice? Now, these are older vehicles. They're not brand new vehicles. I got that, right? But what are the big problems with these where they need to be replaced? Remember, they're too dangerous to drive, not too ugly to drive. I've driven those kinds of cars, but they're too dangerous to drive. So now out comes Doreen Ferguson. Doreen Ferguson is head of the Parks Department, and she's taking pictures of us, which seems to me to be a little bit odd. She's going around and taking pictures from various angles. Not of the vehicle, she's taking pictures of us. I'm shooting with the camera. We've got Jack Brown there, who is a local mechanic, and Sandy Cassanelli, and she keeps taking these pictures. And I'm thinking, gosh, she has really nothing better to do than take pictures of us while we're taking a look at the vehicles? Later, when we went over to Abe Huntley's shop, he deals with parole and probation. When we arrived, he said, well, there are the vehicles. Go ahead. So, had no problems. He didn't need to come out and supervise what we were doing. But here's Doreen Ferguson from Parks taking all these pictures. Later, when she explained to the commissioner, she said, it really took a lot of my time. Hey, nobody's asking you to come out and take a bunch of pictures. To stand there and say, oh, hello, welcome. Oh, these are the vehicles, all right. But she's snapping pictures from various angles? Really? Taking pictures of the people who are shooting the video of looking at the vehicles. So we take a look at a number of different vehicles, and one of the fellows that is showing us a vehicle that's having trouble driving down the road straight. Jack Brown takes a look at it. He looks underneath. He's not putting it on scopes, and he's, not running it through some kind of big evaluation process. He said, well, I'm just a mechanic, but it seems to me there's a possibility that perhaps this frame has been stretched a little bit. So you just might want to look into that. Later on, in fighting against the results of this, Rob Brandeis from Public Works said, well, Jack Brown said that it would definitely... No. He didn't say definitely anything. I was there. It's on tape. That's why I like taping things. He said there's a possibility you might want to look into that. Later, when explaining again why he was so upset with this vehicle report by Sandy Cassanelli, with my video and with the comments from Jack Brown, he said again, well, Jack Brown claimed that it was due to some kind of problem, and we've proven that's not true. No, that's not what Jack Brown said. He said there's a possibility you might want to look into that. He was very nice about it. By the third time that Rob Brandeis testified this way, this is no longer a mistake, because after the first time, Sandy Cassanelli said, well, that's not what he said. After the second time, I held up my hand in the audience and said, that's not what he said. I was there, and that's not what shows on the tape. By the third time, this is no longer any kind of mistake. Now, the public has heard this from Rob Brandeis now 5 times. So here's my question. How many times does he need to be reminded that that's not a truthful statement? This is not what Jack Brown said. Okay, so let's go back to the repercussions of this report. Report was typed up and given to the commissioners and shared with, of course, all of the departments. And I shot a bunch of videos of it. I have 3 hours of this thing. Well, the reaction from county government was electric. They really didn't like this forensic examination of the county fleet. And they didn't like the idea that in preparation for our visit, that the Public Works Department changed the tags on the vehicles. That doesn't look good. So one of the commissioners said, well, let me tell you, this report cost $10,000 to make. Now, wait a minute. How can it possibly cost $10,000 for a report when there was no budget and no bill? Well, said Rosemary Paget, who was, at that point, the chief financial officer for the county, it took a lot of money for these departments to refute these false claims. False claims? And it took them money to refute those things? It took them money to refute? How does that work out? So we asked the other two commissioners, why does this say $10,000? No answer. A week goes by. Oh, we thought we'd ask you again, why does this say $10,000? No answer. Third week. Why does it say $10,000? No answer. Fourth week. Why does it say $10,000? No answer. Finally, because we kept asking the same question and getting absolutely no answer, I mean, you'd ask the question and they just looked down at the carpet. Where does this $10,000 come from? We'd like to know about that $10,000. So Rosemary Paget, the chief financial officer, said, well, I have a report right here that itemizes why it cost $10,000. So we never get a chance to take a look at these reports before the meeting. Why, I know people would be prepared. You can't really let the public see it ahead of time because maybe they could prepare what they're going to say in response to your declaration. So on here, one of the first things that pops out at me is that, well, here's a county commissioner refuting her own report. She spent time refuting her own report. Where does this number come from, Chief Financial Officer Rosemary Paget? The only time that you know with county government that you've gotten a little victory is when you talk them down to zero. What I mean is you say something to them that they simply cannot answer. Because what they've said is so outrageous, it's so wrong, it's such a big lie, that they cannot respond in any way. So this long pause. And then Rosemary Paget, the chief financial officer, said, well, my department, the finance department, we didn't prepare this report. I said, this is on your letterhead. So it seems fairly obvious that your department did prepare this report. And her answer was, well, I had nothing to do with it. And I said, at the bottom of this is your signature. That was the end of explanations of where the $10,000 came from. Rob Brandeis got up from Public Works and said, I just don't have enough time to explain to you why we do things the way that we do. Why, we have so much documentation for this. The boxes alone would fill up the Ann Basker Auditorium. That's a lot of boxes. That's a lot of boxes with a lot of paperwork, and they would then have more boxes than they have vehicles. This is just the documentation that would prove that everything he says is correct. Like switching the tags. This has come up as an example of why we need to watch our county government and what they're telling us. Of course, the other two commissioners always outvoted Sandy Cassanelli, and they said, oh, yes, definitely, we need these new vehicles. We desperately need them. Let's not allow our poor public employees to drive these vehicles around, and they were sold to an unsuspecting public. This was considered to be a victory of kinds. This is where Sandy Cassanelli got the nickname Cassanelli, because she insisted on asking questions about things, and although she'd always be outvoted, she's asking questions. What? You can't be asking questions. That's embarrassing. But I lost the vote. Yeah, but you're embarrassing us by asking these questions. It reminds me of the border guards on the border between the United States and Mexico. Rail cars are coming through this border every day, day and night. There isn't time to stop every single rail car and look inside of it and see if it's full of arms or tomatoes or refugees, or there's no time to look at all that. What she insisted on doing is every once in a while stopping the train, looking inside one of the containers. This can't be tolerated. So everyone was willing to accept the fact that, oh yes, well, it cost $10,000, we can't ever have that again, and accept the fact, oh, everything's going great over in Public Works, and ignore the fact that the tags had been changed. What does that mean, the tags have been changed? Why would you change the tags? And everything glossed over, and eventually Sandy Cassanelli was recalled by about 17% of the voting public. Because she's Cassanelli, you see.
You've just passed Antelope Freeway.